Rain had been falling over Seattle since early morning, turning the streets into a blur of gray clouds, wet sidewalks, and glowing headlights. 19-year-old Lily Morgan hurried through the university library with her hood pulled over her head, trying to escape the rain before it soaked through her jacket. She wasn't having a good day. In fact, lately, it felt like she wasn't having many good days at all. Since starting college, Lily had slowly begun to lose the confidence she once had. Everyone around her seemed to know exactly where they were going. Her classmates talked about careers, internships, relationships, and 5-year plans, while Lily couldn't even decide what she wanted to study anymore. She had once dreamed of becoming a writer, but somewhere along the way, she had started believing that her dreams were unrealistic. Her mother kept telling her that she had plenty of time to figure things out, but Lily didn't feel like she had time. She felt stuck. That morning, after receiving another disappointing grade on an assignment, Lily escaped to the oldest section of the university library. She often went there when she needed to be alone because hardly anyone visited that part of the building. The shelves were tall, the lights were dim, and the smell of old paper filled the air. Lily wandered between the shelves until one particular book caught her attention. It was an old hardcover novel with a faded blue cover. She pulled it out, wiped away a thin layer of dust, and noticed something strange. A small white envelope had been tucked between the pages. She almost put it back, but then she noticed something written across the front. Her heart suddenly stopped. The envelope had her name on it. Lily Morgan. She looked around the empty library. For a few seconds, she wondered if someone was watching her. Then, she picked up the envelope and turned it over. There was no return address, no stamp, and no explanation. Only her name. Lily carefully opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper folded in half. She unfolded it and began reading. The first line made her freeze. "Lily, if you're reading this, you still have time." She stared at the sentence, confused. Then she continued. The letter said that Lily would read it on a rainy morning in the university library, exactly where she was standing. It mentioned the blue book she was holding and even described the small silver bracelet on her wrist. Lily looked down at the bracelet in disbelief. Nobody could have known she was wearing it unless they had seen her that morning. She continued reading. The letter warned her about a decision she would make 3 weeks from now. It said that she would receive an opportunity that looked perfect at first, but accepting it would take her life in a direction she would eventually regret. Lily's hands began to shake. Then, she reached the final paragraph. It said, "You will think this is a joke. I know because I thought the same thing, but in 3 days, you will meet someone at a coffee shop. Do not ignore what they tell you." Lily stared at the page for several seconds before laughing nervously. This had to be a prank. Maybe one of her classmates had somehow found out about her private worries and decided to scare her. She folded the letter, placed it back inside the envelope, and shoved it into her backpack. She decided she wasn't going to think about it again. 3 days later, Lily had almost forgotten about the letter. She was sitting in a small coffee shop near campus, working on an essay she had been avoiding for days. Outside, the sky was cloudy, but for once, there was no rain. She ordered a hot chocolate and returned to her laptop. A few minutes later, a young woman sat at the table beside her. Lily barely noticed her until the woman accidentally dropped her phone. Lily picked it up and handed it back. "Thanks," the woman said with a nervous smile. Then she looked at Lily and said something that made Lily's heart skip. "You look like someone who is about to give up on something important." Lily stared at her. Those were almost the exact words from the letter. "What did you say?" Lily asked. The woman smiled strangely. "I said you look tired." Lily didn't answer. The woman stood up and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned around and said, "Don't take the job offer." Lily's face went completely pale. The woman disappeared into the crowd outside. Lily immediately opened her backpack and pulled out the envelope. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the letter again. The warning was exactly the same. Do not accept the opportunity that looks perfect. Lily suddenly felt as if the entire world had become unfamiliar. Someone knew about a decision she hadn't even made yet. She returned to her apartment that evening and searched through every drawer, every notebook, and every old box she owned, trying to figure out where the letter could have come from. Then, she noticed something she had never paid attention to before. The handwriting on the letter looked familiar, very familiar. She placed the paper beside one of her old college notebooks. The handwriting was almost identical to hers. The shape of the letters, the way certain words leaned slightly to the right, even the way she crossed her T's. Lily's breathing became slow as one terrifying thought entered her mind. What if she had written the letter herself? She immediately rejected the idea. That was impossible. She had never written it. She had never even seen the envelope before that morning. But then she turned the letter over. At the bottom, beneath the final sentence, there was a date. Lily stared at it. The date was 10 years in the future. She checked it again. Then again. Her hands began trembling. Someone had written her a letter. Someone who knew exactly where she would be, what she would be thinking, and what decision she would soon face. But the date suggested something impossible. The letter had been written by someone who shouldn't exist yet. Lily barely slept that night. At 2:17 in the morning, she finally got out of bed and opened her laptop. She searched her own name online, hoping to find some explanation. At first, there was nothing unusual. Then, she discovered an old article from a local newspaper archive. The article was dated 10 years in the future. Lily almost closed the page, thinking it was a mistake, until she saw the photograph attached to it. Her heart stopped. The woman in the photograph was older, but Lily recognized her immediately. It was her. The headline underneath the photograph read, "Local writer Lily Morgan disappears after leaving behind one final message." Lily stared at the screen in complete silence. She had never become a writer. She had never even finished her degree. Yet 10 years from now, according to that article, she was a successful writer, and she had disappeared. Lily slowly reached for the envelope on her desk. There was only one sentence left on the back of the letter that she hadn't noticed before. It was written in the same handwriting. The first letter was meant to save you. The second one will tell you why. Lily looked toward the clock. It was 2:18 a.m. Somewhere in the darkness of Seattle, a second envelope was already waiting for her. And this time, it wasn't hidden inside a library book. It was waiting somewhere she had been every single day. Lily didn't sleep for the rest of the night. She remained sitting at her desk, staring at the newspaper article on her laptop, and trying to convince herself that there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe someone with the same name had written the article. Maybe the photograph wasn't really her. Maybe the entire website was fake. But every time she zoomed in on the photograph, she recognized the same eyes, the same small scar above her eyebrow, and the same silver bracelet she had been wearing since her grandmother gave it to her years ago. The woman in the photograph was older, but there was no denying it. It was Lily. Just after sunrise, Lily finally closed her laptop and went to university. She couldn't concentrate during her classes. Her mind kept returning to the final sentence of the letter. The second one will tell you why. She had no idea where the second envelope was, but the letter had said it was somewhere she had been every single day. She began thinking about all the places she visited regularly: the university, the cafe, the bus stop, her apartment, the library. After class, she went straight back to the old library. She walked slowly through the shelves until she reached the same section where she had found the first letter. Nothing. She checked the blue book again. Empty. She searched the table where she had been sitting that morning. Nothing. Frustrated, she was about to leave when she noticed something beneath the old wooden chair. A tiny corner of white paper was sticking out from underneath one of the legs. Lily pulled the chair aside and found another envelope taped underneath it. Her name was written across the front. Her heart began beating faster. She opened it immediately. The second letter was longer than the first. It began with a sentence that made Lily sit down. "I know you're scared. I was scared too." Lily read on. The writer explained that she had spent years trying to understand the letters and had eventually discovered the truth. They weren't meant to predict the future. They were meant to change it. Every decision Lily made after receiving a letter would alter what happened next. The future wasn't fixed. It was a series of possibilities. And the letters were being sent back because the older Lily had discovered that something terrible would happen if the younger Lily continued living the life she was currently living. But the letter didn't explain what the terrible event was. Instead, it gave Lily another warning. "In 4 days, your mother will receive a phone call. She will tell you it's nothing. Don't believe her." Lily stopped reading. Her mother. Suddenly, the mystery became personal. Lily immediately called home, but her mother didn't answer. She called again. Still nothing. Panic began rising inside her. She left the library and hurried toward the bus stop. When she reached her apartment, she found her mother in the kitchen preparing dinner. "Mom," Lily shouted. Her mother turned around, surprised. "What's wrong?" Lily stared at her for a moment. She wanted to tell her everything, the letters, the newspaper article, the future version of herself, but the words wouldn't come out. Instead, she asked, "Are you okay?" Her mother smiled. "Of course. Why wouldn't I be?" Lily didn't know what to say. She decided not to mention the letter. That night, she watched her mother carefully. She noticed how tired she looked, how she occasionally held her shoulder, and how she kept checking her phone. "Mom, are you hiding something from me?" Lily finally asked. Her mother froze for a second. Then she smiled. "I'm just tired, sweetheart," but Lily knew that answer wasn't the truth. 4 days later, the phone rang. Lily was sitting at the kitchen table when her mother answered. Lily immediately remembered the letter. Her mother listened quietly for several seconds before saying, "Yes, I understand." Then she hung up. Lily stood up. Who was that? Her mother forced a smile. Nobody important. Lily's heart sank. "Mom," her mother looked at her. "It's nothing." Those 2 words were exactly what the letter had warned her about. Lily knew she couldn't ignore it anymore. "Tell me the truth." Her mother finally sat down. Her eyes filled with tears. She explained that she had recently been diagnosed with a serious heart condition and had been hiding it because she didn't want Lily to worry. Lily felt as though the floor had disappeared beneath her. Suddenly, the mysterious letters didn't seem like a game anymore. The future version of herself had known. She had known her mother would become ill. She had known Lily would try to ignore the warning. But why had she never mentioned it directly? Why had she only given clues? Lily returned to the second letter and read the final paragraph. "You will want to save her by giving up everything. Don't. The mistake I made was believing that loving someone meant sacrificing your entire future for them. Your mother never wanted that. She wanted you to live." Lily cried as she read those words. She had spent years believing that her mother was the reason she couldn't chase her dreams. She worked extra hours because of her, avoided taking risks because she couldn't afford failure, and had slowly convinced herself that her own future didn't matter. But perhaps that was the exact mistake her future self had made. The next morning, Lily visited her mother's doctor and learned that treatment was available, but it would be expensive. Lily immediately thought about the job offer mentioned in the first letter. She had been offered an assistant position at a prestigious publishing company. It paid well, but the job would require her to abandon her writing ambitions and work long hours. According to the first letter, accepting it would send her life in a direction she would regret. Lily was trapped between 2 choices. She needed money for her mother's treatment, but she also knew the letter was warning her not to accept the job. For the first time, she wondered whether the letters were actually helping her or controlling her. Maybe her future self had made mistakes too. Maybe the future wasn't something she was supposed to obey. Maybe she was supposed to understand it and then make her own choices. Lily decided to meet the woman from the coffee shop. She had searched everywhere, but couldn't find her. Then, while looking through the second letter again, Lily noticed a name written faintly in the corner. It was a name she recognized. Sarah. Lily suddenly remembered that her mother had once mentioned an old friend named Sarah who had disappeared from their lives years ago. Lily began searching through her mother's belongings and eventually found an old photograph. In the picture were 3 young women standing together outside a university building. One of them was Lily's mother. Another was Sarah. But the third woman made Lily's blood run cold. It was the same woman from the coffee shop. Lily turned the photograph over. On the back, there was a handwritten message, "For the 3 of us," before everything changed. Lily stared at the photograph, confused. Why was Sarah involved? Why did she know about the letters? And why had the future version of Lily sent her to find this woman? That evening, Lily received an email from an unknown address. There was no subject line. Only one sentence: "If you want to know what happened to your future self, come to the old train station tomorrow at midnight. Come alone." Lily stared at the screen. She knew it could be dangerous. She knew she could be walking into a trap. But she also knew she couldn't continue living with unanswered questions. The next night, she arrived at the abandoned train station just before midnight. The platform was almost completely empty. Cold wind moved through the broken windows, and the sound of distant trains echoed through the darkness. Lily waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Finally, footsteps appeared at the end of the platform. A woman slowly walked toward her. Lily recognized her immediately. It was Sarah. But Sarah looked frightened. She stopped a few feet away and whispered, "You shouldn't have found the letters." Lily stared at her. Why? Sarah looked around nervously before answering. Because your future self wasn't the only person who knew about them. Lily's heart raced. What do you mean? Sarah reached into her coat and pulled out another envelope. But this one was different. It wasn't addressed to Lily. It had a different name written across the front. Sarah looked directly into Lily's eyes and said, "Your future self didn't disappear by accident." Then, she handed Lily the envelope. Someone made sure she disappeared. Lily looked down at the name written on it, and when she recognized the name, she realized that the person behind everything was much closer to her family than she could ever have imagined. Lily stood frozen on the abandoned train platform, staring at the envelope Sarah had placed in her hands. The name written across it belonged to someone she knew better than anyone else in the world. Her mother. For several seconds, Lily couldn't speak. "Why does my mother's name have to do with this?" she finally asked. Sarah looked toward the empty railway tracks before answering. "Because your mother knew about the letters long before you did." Lily felt a cold wave move through her. "That's impossible." Sarah shook her head. "Your mother and I were friends when we were young. We both knew about your future self. We knew she would eventually discover the letters, and we promised her we would protect you." Lily opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a photograph of herself at around 9 years old, standing beside her mother in front of the same university library where she had found the first letter. On the back of the photograph was a message written in her mother's handwriting. "I wish I could have protected her from everything." Lily looked at Sarah. What happened? Sarah took a deep breath. 10 years from now, you become a successful writer. You write a book about your childhood, your mother, and the choices you made after receiving the letters. The book becomes extremely successful, but it also reveals something your mother had spent years trying to hide. Lily's voice became quiet. "What?" Sarah hesitated. "Your mother had been investigating an old financial scandal involving a publishing company. She discovered that several people had been stealing money from writers and hiding it through fake contracts. One of the people involved was a powerful executive. When your mother discovered the truth, she tried to expose him." Lily stared at Sarah in disbelief. "But what does that have to do with me?" Sarah replied. Everything, according to Sarah. Lily's future self had eventually discovered the same evidence and written about it publicly. The executive had tried to silence her career, ruin her reputation, and eventually make her disappear from public life. But there was something even more shocking. The person who had unknowingly helped the executive was someone Lily trusted. Her mother had been pressured into keeping silent because she believed it was the only way to protect Lily. Lily suddenly understood why her mother had always been so protective, why she had discouraged Lily from writing publicly, and why she had always told her to choose a safe career. Her mother wasn't trying to destroy her dreams. She had been afraid that Lily would face the same danger she had once faced. Lily returned home before sunrise. Her mother was sitting by the window, waiting for her. The moment she saw Lily's face, she knew the truth had finally come out. "You found Sarah," her mother whispered. Lily nodded. "And the letters." Her mother closed her eyes. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I wanted to tell you." Lily sat beside her. "Then why didn't you?" Her mother looked at her. "Because I was terrified. I thought if you knew, you'd become obsessed with changing the future. I didn't want you to spend your life afraid of something that hadn't happened yet." Lily looked at the photograph in her hand. "Did my future self send the letters?" Her mother nodded slowly. "Yes." Lily's eyes widened. "How?" Her mother explained that years in the future, Lily had discovered an experimental research project involving theoretical communication across time. The project wasn't supposed to allow people to send objects through time, but it had produced strange results. Lily's future self had managed to send short written messages back to specific moments in her younger life. She couldn't send everything. She couldn't explain the entire future. She could only send fragments, small warnings that might change the decisions leading toward the future she regretted. "So, she knew she was going to disappear?" Lily asked. Her mother nodded. She knew she was going to lose everything she'd built. But she also knew that you could prevent it. Lily's voice trembled. "Why didn't she just tell me exactly what would happen?" Her mother smiled sadly. "Because then you would have lived your life trying to follow someone else's instructions. She wanted you to become yourself, not become her." Lily suddenly understood. The letters had never been instructions. They had been opportunities. Every warning had pushed her to question the choices she was making. The first letter had warned her about the publishing job. The second had warned her not to sacrifice her entire future for her mother. The meeting with Sarah had shown her the truth about her family. The letters weren't telling her what to do. They were teaching her how to choose. A few days later, Lily turned down the publishing job. Instead, she applied for a smaller writing program that allowed her to study while working part-time. She also helped her mother get the medical treatment she needed. It wasn't easy. There were months when money was tight, and there were moments when Lily wondered whether she had made the right decision. But for the first time, she was making choices because they were hers, not because she was afraid of what might happen. Months passed. Lily began writing again. She wrote every morning before class and every evening after work. She wrote about ordinary people, complicated families, forgotten dreams, and the courage it took to start over. Eventually, one of her stories was published in a small literary magazine. Then another. Her writing slowly gained attention. One evening, nearly a year after finding the first letter, Lily returned to the old library. She walked toward the same shelf and pulled out the same blue book. Inside was another envelope. But this time, she wasn't afraid to open it. She already knew who had written it. The letter was short. "Lily, if you've reached this point, you chose differently. I don't know exactly what your life looks like now, but I know one thing. You are no longer living the life I regretted. I used to think the purpose of these letters was to save myself. I was wrong. Their purpose was to give you a chance to become someone I never had the courage to be. Don't spend your life trying to find me. Don't spend your life trying to create the future I wanted. Live your own life. Love people while you have them. Take risks when they matter. And when you're afraid, remember that fear is not a prediction. It is only a feeling. You still have time. Lily wiped away a tear and smiled. She folded the letter carefully and placed it inside the book. Then she did something she had never expected to do. She left the future alone. She stopped searching for the older version of herself. She stopped worrying about the newspaper article. She stopped wondering whether she would become the woman in the photograph. Instead, she began living one day at a time. Years later, Lily became a successful writer. Her mother recovered and eventually opened a small flower shop near the coast. Sarah remained part of their lives, no longer as a mysterious woman from an abandoned train station, but as a close family friend. And Lily never disappeared. She never became the woman from the old newspaper article. That future had changed. One rainy afternoon, Lily was sitting in her office working on her latest novel when she noticed an old blue book sitting on the shelf. She smiled when she remembered the first letter. She opened the book one final time. There was nothing inside. No envelope, no message, just an empty page. Lily closed the book and looked out at the rain. For years, she had believed the future was something waiting for her, a fixed destination she had no control over. But now she understood something far more important. The future wasn't a road already built. It was a road created by every choice she made. The letters hadn't saved her life. They had taught her that her life was hers to save. Lily smiled, returned to her desk, and began writing. And somewhere, in a future that would never happen, an older version of Lily finally closed her eyes with peace, knowing that the girl she once was had chosen a different ending.